What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and today we're going to be talking about a massive hand that happened over on PokerGo. One of the largest hands we've ever seen on any kind of televised game. On that note, let's go ahead and jump into the action.
Put my hat down.
Rob, the ace deuce suited calls on the button. It's Antonius with the ace king of hearts in the small blind.
Paul, can I have a stack of flags, please?
Wait, 30,000.
Of flags?
The 3-bet is to 30K.
He wants a color up from his yellow chips.
You know you're out of position, right?
The quick call by Persson.
So did Rob.
Rob's in there as well.
Just what I wanted.
Sizable pot already developing.
Our hand begins at 1,000, 2,000 with a $2,000 ante, and Eric Persson opening it up with the Queen 9 of hearts in the cutoff. This is a standard open. Maybe it folds every now and then, but I don't think that it does. Especially as you get deeper, this is going to be a hand you don't want to have. You're going to want to have in your range. It's going to have some pretty reasonable playability, and it'll give you some nice boards where you can have some value that look a little bit disguised. Yang looks down the button at ace deuce of clubs. I think typically you want to re-raise this. You're very deep. Typically speaking, when you look at 4-bet ranges or 5-bet ranges, the more money you have behind, the more you're going to use hands like suited wheel aces as your bluffs. The logic is that you block aces with your ace, and you have very good equity against a lot of the higher pairs that we would want to call. And additionally, when there's a flush draw situation, it's better to have the nut flush draw than the lower ones, and that's going to definitely come up in this hand specifically. Anyway, Yang decides just to call, which is fine too. And the action now is on Antonius with ace king of hearts in the blinds. Definitely got to re-raise here. There's not really much of an argument to be made for a call. You're way ahead of everybody, all that kind of stuff. He does decide to make it about $30,000. I think this is fine. A couple schools of thought you can think about here. First is that you're playing people that are probably going to play pretty loose versus 3-bet. Maybe you go a bit bigger. Second would be you're very deep and out of position. Maybe you want to go smaller to reduce the pot size because in position will over-realize. I don't really mind seeing anything from around this size up to about 40, 45, 50,000. All seem pretty reasonable. I might lean towards going a bit bigger in this exact situation. Anyway, the big blind gets out of the way. Now the action's back over to Eric Persson with the Queen 9 of hearts. This is close. I don't mind really any of the options. Kind of a classic poker hand spot. I think folding is fine, probably preferred. I think the occasional 4-bet is okay, although you typically want to have an ace. And I think calling is also all right. So I don't really mind any of the choices here for Persson. He does decide to go ahead and call, and now the action's on the button with Yang looking at ace deuce of clubs. With ace deuce of clubs here, closing the action, getting a good price, you have a very clear-cut call. You're simply just getting the odds, and you're going to be in position, so you're going to realize your equity quite effectively. Yang agrees. He does make the call, and let's take a flop.
So it's cost me the same.
8-3-3 with 2 hearts. Flush draws for Antonius in Persson. Rob Young with the backdoor straight flush draw.
$40.
140.
Antonius leads for 40K and Persson snap raises to 140,000.
Let's just run it. I think I'll be chip leader.
I think Persson's serious. Just get it in. Whoa.
Antonius clicks it back.
Let's go.
Makes it 250,000. Persson calls.
The flop comes 8-3-3, 2 hearts. This is a board where the pre-flop raiser has a good size advantage because if you re-raised with a high pair, you now have a very safe flop. Neither of your opponents should really have a 3 very often at all. They can maybe have something like ace 3 suited, but that's just about it. And the only other hands you're really behind are pocket 8s or pocket 3s. While those things are all possible, they're very unlikely. So if Patrick does have a hand like aces, kings, queens, that kind of thing, he can value bet pretty aggressively. Patrick can also have pocket 8s or maybe occasionally pocket 3s or really ace 3 suited. So Patrick definitely also has a few 3s that maybe his opponents don't have all the time. Anyway, Patrick now decides to bet 40K into 94K. This seems like a reasonable size. I think typically speaking in this spot, you want to go for a small size. I kind of like 1/3 pot or so. The logic being when you're multi-handed, smaller bets tend to be preferred as it's more likely someone has a stronger hand. And this gives you room to value bet more thinly, and it also forces your opponents to have to defend somewhat wide. On a board like this as well, there's not really that much going on. Yes, there's a flush draw, but there are no straight draws at all and very few sets. So you're not really too worried about trying to deny people's equity. Anyway, Antonius bets 40K. Action now on Persson. I pretty strongly lean towards call with Persson's hand. In fact, I don't think you would do too much raising here at all. Yes, maybe once in a while you want to raise with a hand like ace-3 suited. In fact, if you have ace-3 suited, it probably mainly does raise. And maybe occasionally you want to raise with hands like 8s or 3s. But realistically, this is a board you have so few good hands. You kind of want to balance out your calling range with those stronger holdings. Typically speaking, on these kinds of paired boards, you're not going to want to have too much of a raise range after calling a 3-bet because it's kind of hard for you to beat hands like aces and kings. Yes, when you have it, it's kind of nice to be able to do so and raise to make this pot bigger, and you are very deep. But calling and keeping your range more protected is probably the better play. If you are going to raise, I think you want to go for a smaller size, especially considering Rob Young is still in the hand, but Persson goes ahead and makes 140K. This seems probably a bit too big to me if you do want to raise. I would imagine something more like 110, 120 is probably a little bit more preferred, especially because now if Young simply has a good hand, he makes some extra money, and his range will be pretty static in terms of what he does versus 110, 120, and 140. Anyway, Persson does go ahead and make 140,000. Young now with the backdoor nut flush draw. It's a situation he could certainly he will always have to fold here, but I'm saying if there was not a raise, it's a situation he could maybe float with the backdoor flush draw looking to bluff some runouts. When the price is this large, you always have to fold. There's simply no other option here for him to make. He does fold, and now back over to Antonius. Bit of a weird spot here on the 8-3-3 flop. So I'm not sure exactly how the re-raise ranges work on this board because typically speaking, you don't have a lot of raises to begin with. I imagine when your opponent raises this large, though, you're mainly going to just be calling when you do continue. If Persson raised small, something more like 100, 110 in that range, you probably have more 3-bets on the flop. When Persson goes bigger, like $140,000 raise, he's a bit more polarized and really should have hands more like a 3 or better or a bluff. When you 3-bet the flop here, you should mainly get action from those value bets, so it typically doesn't make too much sense. That said, even versus hands like a 3, Antonius is well in the lead. The problem for Antonius is, versus a lot of players, if you put every diamond on this flop, you are stone dead, and because of that, I greatly prefer just calling here in Antonius' shoes. Antonius decides to go a different direction here on the flop and actually 3-bet the 250,000, so almost a min re-raise from Patrick, making it 250,000 to go. In fact, I think that might be a minimum raise. I don't really know exactly what he's going for with this. Maybe he just thinks it's so likely that Eric has a flush draw. Maybe he's playing with Eric a lot and he knows this is bluff heavy, or he could have 9s, or it could be lower hearts. That we're getting into territory where I think maybe Patrick has some kind of read, and it's hard for me as a commentator to break down exactly what he's doing. But I would say at home in this spot, you should really mainly just be calling. I think getting in this many big blinds, they're 500 big blinds effective. You just don't want to do that with draws, on paired boards rather. It's just going to be very, 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 very bad for you when they put in the money. Okay, so Antonius basically min 3-bets. In fact, I think this is a min 3-bet, right? 142. Yeah, min 3-bets. Action back over to Persson. Facing a min 3-bet, you're going to have to call because, simply put, if your opponent has a high pair, you have the equity. Maybe once in a while Antonius is bluffing, although that does seem pretty suicidal versus Persson. And then, once in a while you are up against those higher flush draws, but Antonius 3-betting the flop, maybe he thinks is a bit more polar than that. Anyway, once you raise this flop, get this price, you're going to have to call. Persson does decide to make the call, and let's take a turn.
The turn is the ace of spades. That locks it up for Antonius. Almost 600K in the pot. He has about 700K behind.
5 seconds.
You don't want to do that.
150,000.
Antonius leads for 150K.
I'm all in.
Persson jams!
What do you have?
I have 600, 700, 750 some thousand.
The turn comes the ace of hearts. This is actually a very interesting turn. Antonius's range is kind of funny now because if he's 3-betting this flop with his overpairs, a lot of them hate this turn. Kings hates this turn. Queens hate this turn. If he's 3-betting the flop with a hand like aces, he now has the nuts and you want to be trapping. If you 3-bet the turn with the nut flush draw, he now has a really nice candidate to check and try and allow Persson to bluff. So while it could make some sense to bet if you think your opponent's going to just, pile it in, and it does give you a little room to bluff with some hands like maybe Jack 10 of hearts, I really think this is the kind of card where Antonius should be doing a ton of checking. And I particularly like checking with this hand. If you bet here, again, you might get Persson to fold flush draws, which is bad for you. And those flush draws are completely dead. When you do get action, a lot of times it should be from hands that have top pair beat. So really, I think that Antonius should be checking in this situation a high percentage of the time. He goes for the very small bet, 1/4 pot. And, that's still reasonable. Like, this is a great term for his hand. I'm thinking about this more from his whole range perspective, but he decides to go for the 1/4 pot bet. And now the action's back over to Eric Persson. With the queen high flush draw here, I think you just fold. It's gross. It's a gross situation, but your flush outs are not clean. Your opponent can have a boat or a higher flush draw. And then it's a paired board, right? So it's a much worse situation for flush draw in general. Your pairs aren't very good. I just don't think there's much of a reason to do anything here other than fold. I also don't think I would have any raises in this spot because Persson either has a 3 or better or some kind of bluff or draw or whatever. There's going to be no situation where Persson can't get the money in and he's in position and there's not a lot of board changing rivers. So I really do think that Persson should just either fold or call in this spot with his whole range. But the thing is, I am not Eric Persson. What do I even own? One card club. Big deal, bro. Persson owns tens of card clubs that offer all kinds of gambling. We simply just have poker. Makes me sad when I think about it. Just having one lonely card room out here in Austin, Texas. Practically nothing. I wish I had enough card rooms to make a play like this because this is a 10, 15, maybe even 20 card room play on the turn. If you can find it in your heart to support this lowly single card room owner, I'd love to invite you to come down to the Lodge and play in our Lodge Championship Series main event on May 10th. It's got a $3,000 buy-in and a $2 million guarantee. Because I'd like to one day be able to light money on fire like this. And with just one card room, it's hard to even imagine that happening. We all have to start somewhere. Anyway, back over to Antonius. You're not happy about this situation. You certainly want to take your opponent into consideration. Versus some tighter opponents, you can reliably expect that $1 million on a paired board will be a full house. In which case, top pair will be losing to said full house. But unfortunately for Eric Persson, Antonius is aware that he is not playing one of the tightest players on the planet, and he digs deep and eventually makes the right decision.
Cool.
Oh,
Antonius
Hard drop.
makes the call.
Ace king.
9 or queen. I have 9 queen.
He hit the ace.
Oh, yeah, I'm dead. Fuck. Nice hand, Patrick.
Nice.
Patrick Antonius wins a pot worth $1,978,000. That is the biggest pot in U.S. televised poker history.
692, but that deal.
We have
I
just
fold ace as
witnessed
well.
something extraordinary. And Eric Persson left with crumbs. He is down to $67,000.
If you enjoyed this hand, you can check out more over on PokerGo. They have a lot of great stuff to choose from. They have a YouTube channel. You can check stuff out for free, as well as their subscription. I'll put some links in the description below so you can head on over there and get content like this from PokerGo. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I will see you again soon.